My parents and sister sued me for the ownership of my house, claiming they sacrificed for my success and tried to forge a mortgage behind my back. But they ended up facing charges instead. I've been financially supporting my parents Robert 58M and Isabel 56F for the past 8 years, along with occasionally helping my younger sister Ruth 28F. I send them $3,000 monthly for their mortgage, utilities, groceries, and other expenses. Ruth gets help with her student loans and car payments when she asks. 3 years ago, I decided to build my dream house. I'm talking about a custom-designed, eco-friendly home with solar panels, smart home technology, and sustainable materials throughout. I did most of the work myself. I'm licensed in both architecture and contracting, and hired subcontractors only for specialized work like electrical and plumbing. The house sits on 5 acres of beautiful land I purchased outright. The property is worth about $800,000 now, and I put every penny of my own money into it. I also did about 60% of the physical labor myself, working nights and weekends for 2 years. My hands still bear the scars from countless cuts and calluses from that build. 2 months ago, I received legal papers that made my blood run cold. My parents, with Ruth as a co-plaintiff, were suing me for ownership of my house. Their claim was that because they raised me and sacrificed everything for my success, and because I've been living off their generosity by receiving financial support over the years, I owed them this house as compensation. Wait, what? Living off their generosity, I've been sending them $36,000 a year for 8 years. That's nearly $300,000 of my money supporting them. But it gets worse. They claimed that because I occasionally stayed at their house when visiting, maybe 10 nights total over 3 years, and because they sometimes helped with small tasks during construction, bringing me lunch a few times, holding a board while I measured, they were entitled to ownership stakes in the property. Ruth's reasoning was the most infuriating. Valeria has always been the favorite, getting all the opportunities. It's time for payback. We deserve something good for once. Before the court date, I tried to resolve this privately. I invited them over for dinner, hoping we could work something out. That was a mistake. Valeria, honey, my mom Isabel, started using that condescending tone I'd grown to hate. You have to understand our position. We raised you, we supported your dreams, and now it's time for you to take care of us properly. I send you $3,000 every month, I replied, trying to stay calm. I've been taking care of you. That's just money, my dad, Robert interjected. We're talking about security. We're getting older and we need to know we'll have a place to live. This house is perfect for us. Ruth was lounging on my couch, acting like she already owned the place. Plus, you can just build another one, right? You're good at this construction stuff. We can't just create a house out of nothing like you can. I stared at them in disbelief. This house took me 3 years to design and 2 years to build. I put my heart, soul, and every spare moment into it. And you want me to just hand it over and start again? Don't be so dramatic, Isabel snapped. We're family. Family shares. You've always been selfish, Valeria, even as a child. This is your chance to finally do something truly generous. That's when I realized they were serious. This wasn't some misguided attempt at securing their future. They genuinely believed they deserved my house. The courtroom was tense. My parents had hired a lawyer, some ambulance chaser type who specialized in family property disputes. I had hired Margaret, a sharp-as-nails real estate attorney, who came highly recommended. The judge, Honorable Patricia Williams, looked skeptical from the start as my parents' lawyer presented their case. He argued that family contributions and implied agreements gave my parents equity stakes in the property. Then came the testimonies, and this is where things got ugly. Isabel took the stand first, wearing her best church dress and putting on her poor suffering mother act. Your Honor. She began dabbing her eyes with a tissue. I sacrificed everything for my daughter's success. I worked 2 jobs to pay for her education, went without so she could have opportunities, and now she lives in this mansion while we struggle to pay bills. The lawyer asked, Has Valeria been contributing to your household expenses? Isabel waved dismissively. She sends some money, yes, but it's barely enough to cover our basic needs. Meanwhile, she's living in luxury. She's ungrateful, Your Honor. We deserve this house after everything we've done for her. I wanted to scream. Some money I've been covering their entire lifestyle. Robert was next, and he really turned on the theatrics. Your Honor, my wife and I sacrificed everything for Valeria's success. We refinanced our house to help pay for her college. We worked extra hours, missed family events, all so she could have a better life. And how does she repay us? By hoarding her success and leaving us to struggle. Can you describe your involvement in the construction of the house, their lawyer asked? Robert straightened up proudly. Oh yes, we were very involved. I personally helped with the foundation work, assisted with framing, and supervised much of the construction. My wife provided meals for the work crew and managed supplies. Without our contribution, this house wouldn't exist. I nearly choked. He helped with foundation work by standing around drinking beer while I dug. His assistance with framing consisted of holding one end of a board for maybe 30 minutes total. And Isabel brought me McDonald's twice and a thermos of coffee maybe 5 times over 2 years. Then Ruth took the stand, and she didn't even try to hide her nastiness. Your Honor, my sister has always been the golden child. Everything was always about Valeria's achievements, Valeria's dreams, Valeria's success. My parents bankrupted themselves supporting her ambitions while I got the scraps. What is your relationship with the defendant, like the lawyer asked? Ruth's face twisted into a sneer. Valeria acts like she's so generous sending money every month, but it's guilt money. She knows she owes us. Finally, it's time for payback. We've been waiting for this moment for years. She has everything and we have nothing. This house should be ours. Listening to my own family testify against me, painting me as some ungrateful villain, was heartbreaking. But I held my composure, trusting Margaret had a plan. When I took the stand, Margaret guided me through the facts methodically. Miss Johnson, can you describe your financial relationship with your parents over the past 8 years? I pulled out my bank statements, all meticulously organized. I have documentation showing that I've sent my parents $3,000 every month for the past 8 years, totaling $288,000. This covers their mortgage, utilities, groceries, medical expenses, car payments, and discretionary spending. And your sister Ruth has received approximately $45,000 over the past 5 years for student loan payments, car repairs, insurance, and various personal expenses she's requested help with. Can you describe the construction process of your home? This is where I got emotional, but in a good way. I designed every inch of this house myself. I obtained all the necessary permits under my contractor's license. I personally excavated the foundation, laid the groundwork, framed the structure, installed insulation, and handled most of the interior finishing work. I have time-lapse videos, photos, and detailed blogs showing my work progression over the 2-year construction period. Margaret then asked the key question. Did your parents contribute financially to this construction? No. Every material, every permit fee, every subcontractor payment came from my personal savings and income. The total investment was approximately $650,000 of my own money, plus roughly 2,000 hours of my personal labor. What about their claimed physical contributions? I sighed. My father visited the construction site maybe 15 times over 2 years. His help consisted of holding boards while I measured and occasionally moving small items. My mother brought me food perhaps 5 times. I appreciate those gestures, but they don't constitute meaningful construction contribution. The cross-examination was brutal. Their lawyer tried to paint me as a heartless daughter who was abandoning her family after they'd sacrificed everything for her success. Miss Johnson, isn't it true that without your parents' sacrifices you wouldn't have achieved your current success? I'm grateful for my upbringing, but I've more than repaid any investments they made in my education through the $288,000 I've provided over 8 years, plus additional support for Ruth. Don't you think you owe them security in their golden years? I believe I've been providing exactly that security through consistent financial support that covers all their living expenses. After closing arguments, I thought we'd done well, but I was terrified. Family court can be unpredictable, and judges sometimes make emotional rather than legal decisions. That's when Margaret stood up and said something that changed everything. Your Honor, before you make your ruling, there's one additional piece of evidence I'd like to present that's crucial to this case. Judge Williams looked intrigued. Proceed, counselor. Margaret handed a folder to the judge and copies to opposing counsel. These are financial records that my client discovered during case preparation. They show the complete financial picture that the plaintiffs have not disclosed. My parents and Ruth suddenly looked nervous. Their lawyer was frantically flipping through pages. Margaret continued, Your Honor. While the plaintiffs claimed they sacrificed everything for the defendant and deserve this house as compensation, the evidence shows a different story entirely. She turned to address the courtroom, her voice clear and commanding. Robert and Isabel Johnson refinanced their home in 2019 not to support their daughter's education as claimed, but to fund a failed business venture, a restaurant that closed within 8 months due to mismanagement and gambling debts incurred by Robert Johnson. My jaw dropped. I had no idea about any of this. Furthermore, the $3,000 monthly payments that Valeria has been making, they don't just cover basic living expenses. Robert Johnson has been using portions of this money to fund regular gambling trips to the local casino, racking up additional debts that Valeria unknowingly helped enable. The courtroom was dead silent. Robert had gone pale and Isabel was shaking her head frantically. Margaret wasn't done. Ruth Johnson, while claiming she received scraps compared to her sister, has actually received $45,000 in direct support from Valeria over 5 years. However, Ruth failed to mention that she inherited $80,000 from her maternal grandmother's estate in 2021, money that was specifically left to her and not Valeria because the grandmother believed Ruth needed more help. Ruth looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. But here's the most shocking revelation, Your Honor. Margaret's voice rose slightly. 3 weeks ago, Robert and Isabel Johnson attempted to take out a mortgage against Valeria's property without her knowledge or consent. They forged her signature on preliminary loan documents using falsified power of attorney papers. The entire courtroom gasped. Even I was stunned. Margaret continued, "This lawsuit isn't about family sacrifice or fair compensation. It's about covering up attempted fraud and securing assets to pay gambling debts that Valeria has unknowingly been subsidizing for years." Judge Williams was staring at my parents with a mixture of shock and disgust. "Is this true? Did you attempt to mortgage property that doesn't belong to you?" Robert tried to stammer an explanation, but their lawyer was already whispering urgently in his ear, probably telling him to shut up. Margaret delivered the final blow. "Your Honor, I have statements from the mortgage company showing the attempted fraud signed affidavit from handwriting experts, confirming the forged signatures and bank records, showing that Robert Johnson lost $23,000 at various casinos in the past 6 months alone, money that ultimately came from his daughter's generous monthly support." Judge Williams called a brief recess to review the new evidence. When court reconvened, her expression was thunderous. "I have been a family court judge for 15 years, she began, "and I have never seen such a clear case of manipulation, deception, and attempted fraud disguised as a family dispute." She turned to my parents and Ruth. "Not only are your claims without merit, but your attempt to mortgage property through forged documents constitutes serious criminal fraud. I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential prosecution." Then she addressed me directly. "Miss Johnson, you are the sole and uncontested owner of your property. Furthermore, given the evidence of financial abuse and attempted fraud, this court is issuing a restraining order prohibiting the plaintiffs from contacting you or coming within 500 feet of your property." She paused, her voice growing stern. "To the plaintiffs, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Your daughter has supported you financially for 8 years, and your response is to attempt fraud and file frivolous lawsuits. This behavior is despicable." The gavel came down with finality. Case dismissed with prejudice. Court is adjourned. Walking out of that courtroom was surreal. My parents tried to approach me, but the bailiff reminded them about the restraining order. Ruth was crying, probably realizing she'd just lost her monthly financial support along with any chance of getting my house. Margaret and I went to celebrate at a nearby restaurant where she explained how she'd uncovered the additional evidence. "When you mentioned your parents seemed unusually confident about winning, I got suspicious," she said. "I hired a private investigator to dig deeper into their finances. The mortgage fraud attempt was discovered when a loan officer suspicious about the paperwork contacted your office to verify the application. I felt sick thinking about how close they'd come to stealing my house through fraud. The next day, I sent my parents and Ruth a certified letter officially ending all financial support. After 8 years and nearly $350,000 of my money, I was done. But the story doesn't end there. Within a week, Robert was arrested for mortgage fraud and forgery. The DA's office took the case seriously, especially given the dollar amounts involved. Isabel wasn't charged, but was named as a co-conspirator. Ruth, desperate after losing her monthly support, actually had the audacity to call me, violating the restraining order, begging for money, and claiming she didn't know about the fraud. I recorded the call and sent it to my lawyer. 2 weeks later, my grandmother on my father's side, Robert's mother, called me. Apparently, the family drama had reached her, and she was horrified by her son's behavior. "Valeria," she said, "I had no idea what your father had become. I'm so sorry this happened to you. It turns out Grandma Rose had been planning to leave her estate to be split between Robert and me. After learning about the lawsuit and fraud attempt, she changed her will entirely. Fast forward 6 months to today, and the justice has been incredibly sweet. Robert was sentenced to 2 years in prison for fraud, though he'll likely serve only 14 months. The judge was particularly harsh during sentencing, stating that the betrayal of family trust for financial gain represents the worst kind of criminal behavior. Robert's lawyer tried to argue for community service, citing his age and health, but the prosecution presented evidence of additional gambling activities and undisclosed debts that sealed his fate. Isabel had to sell their house to pay legal fees and Robert's gambling debts. What I discovered later was shocking. They owed over $150,000 in various debts, including 3 different payday loan companies, 2 credit card companies, threatening lawsuits, and the IRS for unpaid taxes from Robert's failed restaurant venture. The house sale barely covered everything, leaving them with nothing. They're now renting a small 1-bedroom apartment in a rough part of town, struggling financially without my monthly support. Isabel had to take a job at a local diner, her first job in over a decade, just to afford basic necessities. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she's aged dramatically, looking years older than her actual age from the stress and shame of everything that happened. Ruth lost her job due to the criminal case publicity. She worked at a bank, and they don't appreciate employees associated with financial fraud. Her termination was swift and brutal. They escorted her out the same day the local newspaper ran the story about the court case. She moved back in with Isabel and is working part-time at a grocery store, barely making minimum wage. What made Ruth's situation worse was that her former friends and colleagues distanced themselves from her completely. She went from having an active social life and decent career prospects to being essentially blacklisted in the local financial industry. No bank or credit union in a 50-mile radius would hire her, and she couldn't afford to relocate for a fresh start. I also learned that Ruth had been bragging to her friends for months before the lawsuit about how she was going to finally get what she deserved from me. She'd apparently been telling people that she was going to inherit a beautiful house and maybe even start her own business with the money she'd make from selling it. The humiliation of her public downfall was almost as devastating as the financial consequences. Meanwhile, I've thrived beyond my wildest expectations. Without the financial drain of supporting my family, that $3,000 monthly payment plus Ruth's periodic requests, I suddenly had an extra $40,000 per year to invest in myself and my business. The relief was incredible. I hadn't realized how much stress that constant financial obligation had been causing me until it was gone. I used the money to expand my business significantly. I hired 2 additional contractors, purchased new equipment, and rented a proper office space instead of working from home. Within 4 months, I landed a major commercial project designing sustainable office buildings for a progressive tech company. The project was worth $2.3 million more than I'd made in the previous 3 years combined. The success brought more opportunities. I was invited to speak at construction industry conferences about sustainable building practices. A local university asked me to teach a guest lecture series on eco-friendly architecture. 3 different companies approached me about consulting on green building initiatives. My house, the one they tried to steal, has become somewhat famous in architectural circles. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same house my family claimed they deserved became my greatest professional asset. I've been featured in 2 design magazines, with a 3rd feature scheduled for next month in Sustainable Living Quarterly. The magazine articles brought unexpected opportunities. A documentary filmmaker contacted me about featuring my house in a series about innovative sustainable homes. A book publisher approached me about writing a guide to owner-builder sustainable construction. I even received an invitation to display my house plans at the National Architecture Museum. I've received multiple offers from potential buyers, all of which I've declined because I absolutely love living here. The highest offer was $1.2 million, nearly double what I invested in construction. But this house represents so much more than money. It's proof of my capabilities, my independence, and my resilience. The house has also become my sanctuary in ways I never expected. After the trauma of the lawsuit and family betrayal, coming home each evening to space I created with my own hands became incredibly healing. Every room holds memories of the construction process, of problems I solved, of skills I developed. Walking through the house reminds me daily of my strength and capability. But the best part, Grandma Rose passed away peacefully last month. She was 94 and had been ill, and I inherited her entire estate, $400,000, plus her beautiful Victorian home in the countryside. In her will, she wrote to Valeria, who built something beautiful with her own hands and never forgot the value of honest work. Your father could learn from your example. The inheritance came with additional surprises. Grandma Rose had been quietly investing in blue-chip stocks for decades. and her portfolio was worth significantly more than anyone realized. She also owned several pieces of valuable antique furniture and jewelry that appraised for nearly $50,000 additional. Most touching was a letter she'd left for me written months before she died. In it, she apologized for Robert's behavior and expressed how proud she was of the woman I'd become. She wrote, "I always knew you were special, Valeria, but I never imagined you'd have the strength to stand up to family manipulation the way you did. Your integrity gives me hope for future generations." I sold Grandma Rose's house and used the money to start a nonprofit foundation that helps young women get training in construction and architecture. It felt like the perfect way to honor her memory and turn this whole nightmare into something positive. The Victorian house sold quickly to a young couple who promised to restore it lovingly, which would have made Grandma Rose happy. This experience taught me several hard lessons. Family doesn't automatically deserve your unconditional support, especially when they're exploiting your generosity. Sometimes people will see your kindness as weakness and try to take advantage of it. Document everything. My meticulous financial record saved me in court. Trust your instincts. I should have questioned why my parents were so confident about their lawsuit. It's okay to cut toxic people out of your life, even if they're family. The hardest part isn't the money I lost over the years. It's grieving the family I thought I had, but I'm building a new life surrounded by people who appreciate and respect me. I'm now completely no contact with my parents and Ruth. The restraining order is still in effect, and I plan to renew it when it expires. I've had to block them on all social media platforms and change my phone number twice because they kept finding ways to contact me through mutual acquaintances. The no-contact decision wasn't easy initially. I struggled with guilt, wondering if I was being too harsh or if there was some way to salvage our relationships. I even went to therapy for a few months to work through the complex emotions of losing my entire family in one fell swoop. My therapist, Dr. Amanda Rodriguez, helped me understand that what I experienced was financial abuse and emotional manipulation patterns that had likely been present throughout my childhood, but which I'd normalized. Through therapy, I realized that my parents had been conditioning me for years to feel responsible for their financial well-being. They'd always made comments about how successful I was becoming, how I should remember where I came from, and how family should stick together. These weren't expressions of love. They were investments in future financial dependency. Dr. Rodriguez helped me recognize that Ruth's resentment toward me wasn't recent either. She'd been harboring jealousy and entitlement for years, probably encouraged by our parents who saw me as their retirement plan. The lawsuit wasn't a desperate last resort. It was the culmination of years of planning and growing resentment. I've started dating someone wonderful, Mike, who's a renewable energy engineer I met through work. He was actually with me during some of the court proceedings and couldn't believe what my family put me through. Mike came from a healthy, supportive family, and his perspective helped me realize just how abnormal my family dynamics had been. Mike and I met when his company was consulting on the solar panel installation for my commercial project. He was impressed not just with my technical knowledge, but with my hands-on approach to construction. When I mentioned I built my own house, he asked to see it, and that first visit lasted 6 hours, as I showed him every detail of the construction process. What I love about Mike is that he appreciates the house for what it represents, not just as a beautiful building, but as a testament to skill, determination, and independence. He's never once suggested I was lucky to have such a nice house or implied that I didn't deserve it. Instead, he asks detailed questions about construction techniques and has even helped me with some minor improvements. Mike was the one who suggested I write down my story and share it online. He said people needed to hear about family financial abuse and how to recognize the warning signs. He's been incredibly supportive throughout my healing process, never pushing me to reconcile with my family or suggesting that I should forgive and forget. My business is booming beyond anything I imagined possible. The nonprofit foundation Building Dreams Foundation has taken off faster than I expected. We received our first round of grant funding from the State Workforce Development Program, and several local construction companies have partnered with us to provide internships and job placement assistance. Our first class of students included 12 women ranging in age from 18 to 45. Watching them learn construction skills and gain confidence has been incredibly rewarding. 3 of them have already been hired full-time by partner companies, and 2 others have started their own small contracting businesses. The program includes not just technical training, but also business education, financial literacy, and mentorship. I wanted to make sure these women had all the tools they needed to build successful, independent careers. We cover everything from reading blueprints to estimating project costs to managing client relationships. One of our students, Maria, reminded me so much of myself at that age, ambitious, hardworking, but lacking confidence and family support. She came from a similar background of family financial dysfunction and was trying to break cycles of poverty and dependence. Watching her master complex construction techniques and land her first big project brought tears to my eyes. The foundation has also attracted attention from other professionals who want to support our mission. We now have volunteer mentors, including architects, project managers, electricians, plumbers, and business owners. The network we're building is creating opportunities not just for our students, but for the entire local construction industry. I wake up every morning in the house I built with my own hands, knowing that no one can ever take it away from me. The sunrise through my custom-designed skylights, the solar panels generating clean energy, the garden I planted around the foundation. Every detail represents my independence and security. The house has become more than just my home. It's become a symbol of what's possible when you refuse to let others define your worth or limit your potential. I've hosted several gatherings for the foundation students, and seeing their faces when they tour the house is priceless. Many of them had never imagined they could create something so beautiful and permanent. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh cutting them off completely. But then I remember Ruth sneering, "Finally time for payback," and my mother calling me ungrateful while I've been supporting them for years. I remember the forged documents, the attempted fraud, the years of manipulation disguised as family love. Some bridges are meant to be burned, and some relationships are too toxic to salvage. The occasional guilt is outweighed by the peace I feel now. I no longer dread phone calls or worry about unexpected financial emergencies from my family. I don't have to justify my purchases or feel guilty about my success. I can make decisions based on my own needs and values rather than constantly accommodating people who saw me as an ATM. To anyone dealing with toxic family members who feel entitled to your success, set boundaries early. Document everything, and don't let guilt manipulate you into supporting people who would literally steal from you given the chance. Trust your instincts, and remember that you don't owe anyone your financial security or peace of mind regardless of shared DNA. Update. I wasn't going to add this, but something happened yesterday that I think you'll appreciate. Ruth showed up at my workplace, violating the restraining order again, demanding to speak with me. Security called the police, but before they arrived, she made quite a scene in our lobby. My receptionist, Janet, later told me that Ruth was screaming about how I was killing my own mother and that she was going to make sure everyone knows what kind of person Valeria really is. What made the situation even more dramatic was that Ruth had brought Isabel with her. My mother was sitting in the parking lot in their beat-up car, looking frail and much older than her 56 years. Ruth kept pointing toward the car, trying to use Isabel's appearance to guilt me into compliance. It was a calculated manipulation tactic that might have worked on the old me, but I could see right through it now. Apparently, Isabel is now seriously ill, diabetes complications from stress and poor self-care, and needs expensive medical treatment. The medical bills are mounting because she let her condition deteriorate for months without proper care, probably hoping I'd eventually cave and resume financial support. Ruth wanted me to pay for it because family is family, and you're successful because of mom's sacrifices. Ruth also revealed during her rant that Robert had been trying to contact me through various means from prison. He'd been sending letters to my old address, which thankfully get forwarded to my lawyer, and had even tried to call my office using different names. Apparently, he's been telling other inmates that his ungrateful daughter abandoned the family, painting himself as the victim in this whole situation. What really struck me was how Ruth looked. She'd lost significant weight, her clothes were ill-fitting and worn, and she had the desperate look of someone who had been struggling financially for months. Her hair was poorly dyed, probably a home job, and she was wearing shoes that were clearly secondhand. The contrast between her current appearance and how she'd looked during the lawsuit was stark. I looked at her calmly and said, "Ruth, your mother called me ungrateful and said she deserved my house. Your father tried to commit fraud using my property. You said it was time for payback and that you've been waiting years for this moment. You made your choices. But she's dying." "Valeria, how can you be so cold?" Ruth's voice cracked, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. "I'm not cold, Ruth. I'm protecting myself from people who tried to destroy my life. Mom has Medicare, and there are charity programs for additional support. You figured out how to try to steal my house. Figure this out like adults." Ruth then tried a different approach, switching to anger. "You know what? You were always Mom and Dad's favorite, and you turned into exactly what they said. You'd become selfish and heartless. I hope you're happy living in your fancy house while your family suffers. Ruth, you literally testified in court that it was time for payback and that you've been waiting for this moment for years. You celebrated the idea of taking my house away from me. Now you want my sympathy. The police arrived and arrested Ruth for violating the restraining order. As they handcuffed her, she was still shouting about how I was abandoning my dying mother and how I'd regret this forever. Isabel never got out of the car, probably too ashamed or too sick to face me directly. She's now facing charges for that violation as well, which could result in jail time since it's her second offense. Her court-appointed lawyer has already contacted my attorney about a possible plea deal, but Margaret advised me to let the legal process run its course. I felt bad for about 5 minutes until I remembered that they literally tried to steal my house through fraud. Some people never learn, and some people will use any crisis, even a legitimate medical emergency, to try to manipulate others into enabling their dysfunction. Final edit. Thank you all for the overwhelming support and awards. Many of you have shared your own stories of toxic family members, and I'm both sorry you've experienced similar situations and grateful that I'm not alone in this. For those asking about the nonprofit, it's called Building Dreams Foundation, and we're accepting applications for our second cohort. We provide scholarships, mentorship, and hands-on training for women entering construction and architecture fields. The response has been incredible. We've received over 200 applications for just 20 spots in our next class. Several major construction companies have reached out wanting to partner with us, and we've received inquiries from other states about expanding the program. What started as a way to honor Grandma Rose's memory has become something much larger than I ever imagined. I've also been invited to speak at 3 different conferences about both sustainable construction and breaking barriers for women in trades. The speaking engagements have led to additional consulting opportunities and have raised the profile of the foundation significantly. Mike has been incredibly supportive throughout this entire journey. Last week, he actually proposed to me in the workshop, where I keep my construction tools the same space where I planned and designed my house. He said he wanted to propose somewhere that represented my strength and independence, which perfectly captures why I love him so much. We're planning a small wedding ceremony in the garden behind my house next spring. It feels perfect to celebrate our new beginning in the space I created with my own hands. Mike has already started helping me design some additions to the house, including a proper office space for the foundation and a larger workshop where we can host training sessions. And yes, I'm keeping the house forever. It's not just a building. It's proof that I can create something beautiful and permanent, even when people try to tear me down. Every morning when I wake up and see the sunrise through those custom skylights, I'm reminded that I have the power to build my own happiness and security. The house has also become a gathering place for the foundation community. We hold monthly dinners for current and former students, and seeing these strong, capable women celebrating their achievements in the space I built with my own hands never gets old. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and refusing to let toxic people drag you down to their level. My family tried to take everything from me, but instead, they freed me to become someone even stronger and more successful than I'd ever imagined possible. Stay strong, everyone. You're worth more than the people who try to diminish you.